In our country, in Italy, the most part of people with Down syndrome are adults in this moment. But this is important because we have to take in mind that facing the job issue means acknowledging the being grown up. If we don't take in mind that the people become adults, we cannot speak about job inclusion because before we have to recognize their adultity and after we can speak about job inclusion. There is no job inclusion without vocational training, but training is not just learning specific tasks. People should first learn how to work and then learn a specific job. When we look to the world of adult people, we can look to this world in three different ways. We can see a never-ending childhood, people that maintain this condition all their life, or we can see people that imitate the adults, is a false self, or we can see simple people, sometimes very simple, but not children anymore. If we recognize that the adult people with Down syndrome is a simple people, but is an adult, we can start to speak about job inclusion. In the center of the topic of job inclusion, there is the topic of the social role. We must tackle the role problem because the role is what regulates the human relation. And acquiring a role means acquiring behavioral rules which can be learned by the youngster just in case he or she knows what the others are expecting from him or from her. This is very important because if we expect that a person that is in the job market is a worker, it starts to be a real worker. If we expect that he's only stay in a job placement, he has not the idea to be a worker and the behavior is not the behavior of a worker. The role is what permits the people to become one person or another person. Also in this moment, my role is a speaker. I look to your face. If you start to sleep, my role is a little bit in crisis, okay? Learning a job is different from learning to work. Learning work means acquire certain operational capabilities regardless of goal and motivation. Learning to work means acquire a mindset, a way of understanding the world. It means interact the role, take on rights and duties, recognize the role of the other. You cannot stay in the job market if you, before learning, you learn to work and after learn a job. I will speak about job placement, and for this work we mean getting a real job function to support and mediation actions within a market production context. In Europe, we have about this topic different situations. We have a situation of some country in which we find overall sheltered workshop. We have a situation of supported employment without wage. We have supported employment with wage subsidy. The wage don't come from the enterprise but from the states, for example. And we have supported employment with wage. This is the Italian situation, and I'll tell you something about this one. In Italy, we have two different options for the people that we include in the job placement. job placement in the open labor market, or social firm. Social firm are enterprises, but with some different in the normal enterprise. The social cooperatives normally provide goods and services aimed at job placement of disadvantaged groups. Are small enterprises with at least 30% of their workforce with disadvantages, not only disabled people. We can find social cooperatives, for example, to include in the job immigrants or people with other problems. The social cooperatives receive some fiscal benefits and quotas within calls for tenders. The other option is the job inclusion in the open market. That is regulated in Italy from a law of '99. And the center of this law is that the law is focused on targeted employment. That means that series of technical and support instruments which allow to adequately evaluate disabled people's working abilities and to introduce them in the right workplace through workplace analysis, support forms, positive action and solution to the problems connected to the different environments, instruments and interpersonal relationship on daily working and social places. In other words, it means that the center of this law is the right person for the right place with all that we need to help them to match and to stay in the best way. The basic of this law is the introduction of the right person at the right place, a balanced distribution of the quota system among employers, because the obligation to assume a person with disability start from the enterprise that have 15 employees, and after grow in the number of the employees with the size of the enterprise. In this law, there is the possibility of agreement between the enterprise, the public office, and the worker to help the introduction of this person in the job. The enterprise can make an agreement, for example, to start with an internship before sign the contract. And this is very, very useful. Another aspect, we have in this law some financial facilitation according to the disability degree of the worker hired. It means that for the people that have a higher disabilities, they receive more financial facilitation. Another aspect are funding for job inclusion programs. Especially for the people with Down syndrome, is very, very important, this concept of the right person to the right place, and the financial facilitation for the people that assume people with intellectual disabilities. And also the possibility in this law of this agreement for the training that help also the enterprise to take away the prejudice that there are in front of people with intellectual disability. And also the possibility to introduce people in small enterprises is very important, because sometimes the group of work is smaller and it's more easy to introduce a person in a group. And also the open market in Italy is different, because in the north we have overall big enterprise, in the south small enterprise, and in this way we have possibility in all the country. We started with IPD to follow directly experience of job inclusion since the beginning of the 90s. And so I wanted to tell you what we have learned by this experience. In Italy, in this moment, there is not a census of workers with Down syndrome, an official census. But the number of the people that is in the job market is increasing. Also, if the number of those who have a job is lower than that of all those who could get it. But we have done an investigation through the association that in Italy follow people with Down syndrome, and we have found that 13% of adult people works with a regular contract. Works with a regular contract that in the most part of the people is a permanent part-time employment contract. We suggest the part-time 20-25 hours in a week several times because in some situations it's very useful for the people to maintain a high productivity and to work in a very good way, maintaining the time for the free time, maintaining time for the transportation because sometimes it needs a lot of time. Our experiences and also some investigation has showed us that the successful of job inclusion are due to three aspects. The first aspect is the autonomy of the employer, the employees. Autonomy is a prerequisite to be included in the job market. And sometimes it's more important than academic skills. Because all the people with Down syndrome want to do simple works. And the aspect connected with the autonomy, with the social relation is very, very important. Another aspect of success is the training on the job. The most part of the people that have had reached a good contract are people that before the job inclusion has learned how to work, but their job was learned directly on the job position through internship. And obviously the third point of success is the right person for the right place. We have also seen that the work organization is much more important than the kind of job assigned. It's not a job better than other job, but there is an organization of the job that is better of other organization of the job. For example, it's very, very important the organization of the tasks. I hope to show you. These are people in very different jobs, one in office, one in McDonald's, but in all the jobs there are a structure, activity, and they know exactly when they start in the morning what they have to do. This lady has a lot of skills too, but every morning she knows exactly what are the skills and the way in which they have to do. Another aspect of the organization is the definition of the roles. They need well-defined roles and the consideration by the colleagues as a work. That is very, very important. For example, in some place in fast food is asked also by the uniform, because the manager has a different uniform from the other ones, and so the roles are very clear. This is the manager, Alfredo, and he's speaking that Alfredo is one of the people. He's not an extra person, but he's one of the people. Alfred is meticulous. We don't have other workers as a they count on him. In our experience, we have organized a sort of protocol of what are the actions necessary to reach the job inclusion. And we have three different actors: the worker, the company, and the family. And we have to follow these three actors in several phases. The first important action is the information and awareness raising of employers. A lot of them don't know who are the people with Down syndrome, don't know other experience. Some of them don't know exactly what is written in the law and which way they have to organize. Another aspect is the information to families and to people with Down syndrome about rights. It's important that the family knows what is a right and what is a pleasure. And the job inclusion is a right, but obviously the person has also some duty, and so you have to distinguish from a pleasure and your rights. Another very important aspect, also before starting with the job inclusion, is the support to family in consciousness raising about the meaning of getting a job and be adult people. It's very important that in the imagine of the family, this person is an adult and is a worker. Because if I don't think so, for example, I go to speak, I remember one mother, then went to speak with the director of the placement of the son and say, oh, please, he is tired, don't ask a lot of things today to my son. The imagine of this worker is terrible. Or for example, we discuss a lot with the parents about the management of the salary. Because there are some family that say, okay, the salary go to over the account of the family and I give pocket money. It's not so. The salary is a part of my imagine of workers. Obviously, I can help people to organize what part of the salary you use, what part of the salary you maintain for the future, but he needs to be involved in this. After we organized an educational part, we organized an educational part of the youngsters with Down syndrome in the comprehension of their role as workers, learning to work. We helped them to design personal profiles and curricula that we send to the enterprise. And when we find the right place for the right person, we support in the first steps before the contract. So we prepare the people for the interview. We help the enterprise to select the correct contract, how many hours, for example, the tools of things like this. Normally, during the first 6 months of the internship, or if we start directly with the contract of the first 6 months of work, we follow with the tutor the new worker. The tutor is an educational tutor that comes from the service of association and follow some hours this worker. Is a role that go to disappear in the time, because for example the first week he stay all the time with the worker, the second week 1 day yes and 1 day no, and after 1 hour, and in 6 months must disappear. The role of this tutor is to help the people, the worker and the colleague, to understand in which way they have to relate, and also to help sometimes the colleague to explain in the correct way the skills, because obviously the skills on the job, the expert is the colleague, but sometimes the way in which they explain is not good for a person with disability, and they need some instruction, or they need some suggestion of the correct relationship. Another action that we do, we monitor the job inclusion at least for 2 years. Monitor, it means also one call for a month with the enterprise. All is okay, do you need something? Sometimes we go to make an observation to see the behavior of the situation. And also to help in the first year if something new happens. Obviously that we give to the enterprise, the family and the workers the counseling in every moment. But it is very important in the first years to support also out of the job position the worker in the acquisition of the role and in understanding something. For example, the first time that you have to ask for holidays. Sometimes you have people that in the past take 3 months of holidays and now started to have a job, and have to understand that it cannot have 3 months of holidays. And it's not because they are bad people, but because you are working and things like this. There are nowadays some obstacles. There are also in Italy a lot of prejudice of the world of work. It's changing, but there are. And so it's very, very important to continue in awareness, and it's useful to have some company agreements. For example, we have a big experience with McDonald's. Only in Rome we have 15 people working in different restaurants of McDonald's. And it was important because from one McDonald's to the other, they pass the experience, they tell the story and things like this. We have a company agreement with Filtrinelli, that is a chain of bookstore, with Deichmann for the shows, things like this. And we, for example, we have an agreement with the Human Resource Association, the Responsible Human Resource Association, and we go to the meeting of this organization of Responsible Human Resources every time that they meet to make 10 minutes of information about the experience of job inclusion, to make this idea that on the job market there are also people and workers that work really. It's important also sometimes to show the results. For example, with McDonald's, we have done after the first 8 inclusion an evaluation of productivity using the same system that they use for the people without disability. And the productivity of our workers is between 70 and 80%. That is a very high productivity. Also from the productivity of the people without disability. And this is an important data for the other enterprise. Obviously, that if you want to organize a good job inclusion, it's necessary to have a service that accompanies the relation between worker and company. In Italy, not in all the city there is a public service that do this. In the north there are some, but in the south of Italy no. And so the role of the association is very, very important. We have started to organize a service for job inclusion in our association, in our branches. We have 51 branches in Italy as ITD. This is an example of one advertisement that we have used for the cinema. We show this before the film. Have you distinguished the worker with Down syndrome? We know. We have to assume. The idea is, really, there are 7 people with Down syndrome in the movie. But the idea, the message is, if you don't see people with Down syndrome in the job market, you have to assume. But also, when you have people that work in the job market, they are workers. This is the message. Okay. Oh, sorry. And